Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion, Carl Banks. And Carl, we've had a day to digest what happened in Houston yesterday with the Giants losing 28-10. And you got a chance to go through the coaches' tape. I took a look at the game as well. And, look, it was disappointing. You heard Brian Dable say after the game, 5 turnovers, you're never going to win that way.
Right.
Which is true. Some of the guys that were turning it over probably are not going to be Giants by the end of next week. Still matters. But let's just cut to the chase here. Daniel Jones got off to a rough start, wound up getting in a groove. I know some of the fans are going to say, yeah, but he got into a groove against their backup defense as the Giants kept their starters out there. As you went and reviewed the game today, what were some of your takeaways from it?
Well, there's a lot more to it, Bob, than what my timeline said after the game. And, when the first interception happened, I said, I'm not going to catastrophize this. I'm going to wait and see if he settles down. And the first thing I realized in watching the coach's tape, he didn't fall apart. He made some really good plays. He kept the offense in rhythm. And, there are, if we want to go through the interceptions, so first, I think it was the first series of the game, might have been the first play of the game.
Nabers it was the first play of the game.
First play of the game was almost an interception. Nabers is on a comeback, and the defender beats him to the position. Ball's out, timing route. Nabers has got to fight for position on that. So that was a near miss. Second interception it's mind-numbing. And I think that's the one that triggered.
You mean the first interception?
Yeah, the first interception. There was a near interception, and then
right. Well, yeah, the first one was 3 and out, nearly picked on the first pass.
Yeah.
The Nabers dropped that deep ball down the right sideline.
Yeah.
So now you punt, and now you're starting deep in your own territory because, hey, to the defense's credit, although they didn't get any pressure, and Houston drove it down the field on them, they stopped them in a goal-to-goal situation.
Sure.
Houston went for it. Defense didn't allow them in the end zone. So bad field position to start.
Sure. So if we take that first series, he throws a beautiful ball to Nabers down the sideline. Nabers doesn't come up with it. That's not a bad pass. So now we get to the first interception, and it is absolutely mind-numbing. It is, you can't, there's no excuse. That's just the dumbest play he could make. And I think that's what triggered everybody in the fan base that, was waiting for that moment to say, I told you so, to start catastrophizing this situation.
Right, because his closest family members couldn't defend what he did on that play because he had 9 different times he could have gotten rid of the ball.
Yeah, it was dumb. It was
horrible.
The dumbest, mind-numbing play. And so for me, I'm like, okay. And I did not even chalk that up to rust. I just said, that's dumb. That's a bad decision. But I'm going to say they're not going to cancel the game. So let's just see if he falls apart or if he gets himself settled and on track. And he did that. Okay, second interception. I asked Phil Simms about this on air, and he kind of spent some time talking about it because there are a lot of experts that are on social media say, oh, he should have put more air under the ball, or he underthrew the ball. The reality is the only option Daniel Jones had on that play is to throw a back shoulder. He threw it hard. Should have been a back shoulder throw. I don't know if that was his intention, but there's a saying in the business, the other guys get paid too. And Derek Singletary played that as about as good as you can play it. And when you have a certain play called and Daniel's throwing it out there, it's going to take some time to get grooved with his wide receivers to know that, hey, I'm gonna throw this back shoulder because I see where the receiver is. He didn't do that. He came back in the game, made several back shoulder throws. So the defender, just given the pass that it was, he just played a hell of a play. And as Phil explained it on air, if he puts more air under the ball, the defender just runs under it and catches it like a receiver. He's got Jalen Hyatt pinned to the sideline. So if that ball is up in the air further, he just keeps running. He just played perfect. And the only option he had, as Phil said, was back shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, either Stingley's going to run under it under more air because he's literally step for step with Hyatt.
Yep.
Or if he floats it even more, the safety's going to come over. And he threw it a little too far inside to start with. But yeah, you know, I was immediately getting texts during the game from family and friends like, oh, he's got to put more air under that. He's not seeing it. And I'm like, you're not listening to the broadcast. The last time I checked, Phil Simms went 22 of 25 in a Super Bowl and won an MVP and is a two-time Super Bowl champion who had a storied career and is a borderline Hall of Fame player. And he told everybody on the air that in that situation, when it's tied, you got to rip it hard and you got to throw it to the back shoulder. That's the only thing that he could have done, that he should have done there, that he didn't do. But all these other experts that, you know, you and I were checking, were like, oh, he's got to put more air under it.
Yeah. And
Phil knows better.
Here's the other thing too. The safety had no chance at it because, contrary to people's comments, he stared the receiver down. He did not. He sent the slot up the seam and held the safety so he could create the one-on-one. So he did hold the safety with his eyes, and then he came outside, throws the ball down. It's interception, no matter how we look at it, but there's something to be learned there. That's a teachable moment. The other one, you just can't explain it, right? This one, they go back in the lab, and the quarterback and the receiver says, okay, next time I see this, if this guy's going to be step for step with you, I'm ripping it back shoulder. So be ready. That's the only other option he had. Now that's going to come with, you know, time and scouting themselves, right? But the other part of that is he wasn't afraid to let it rip. And he let it rip a lot in this game. He had a lot of, you know, over 20-yard passes. But I'm going to challenge anyone, and this is not me pro Daniel Jonesing it, but it's me saying, whatever your comments are and however you feel, and you're entitled to however you want to feel about Daniel Jones, go look at the entire first half, look at the all 22, and tell me if you see something that says, okay, we can work with this. Because I left that after looking at the all 22, and I'm saying take the mind-numbing play out of it, the pick six, he did a lot of good things in the game. And had chances for a few more big plays. The other one was, you know, someone says, oh, he should have led Darius Slayton into the end zone. That ball couldn't have been more perfect. They call that dropping it in the bucket. He literally dropped that ball in the bucket. And I'm not sure what else he could have done. He hit Darius Slayton in stride. So, and I mean, that ball just came in, dropped in the bucket. So, again, you guys can feel the way you want to feel, but the film, take a look at it. Come back and tell me what you saw. Take a look at the all 22, and if you tell me that it's a lost cause, I'm just going to just tell you good luck, you know? But I know from my expert opinion, in 40 years in this business, what I saw, and I'm not putting him anywhere on any pedestal. I'm just telling you, there are some things that will make you feel like, okay, we got something we can work with here. Another, he had a crossing route right before the 2-minute drill to Wandale Robinson. He hits Rondell, leads him, and Wandale throttles down. If he just runs through the football, he's probably scoring. But he throttled down, caught the ball because he had to kind of speed up again, and then he falls down. But he puts it right on him, and all Rondell has to do is run through the football. So that's that. But here's the other part. There's no excuses if this offensive line continues to trend in the direction that it's trending. You've got a productive wide receiver core, super talented, very diverse, and you've got an offensive line that for the first time that we've seen is they're working in unison. No free runners. Now, listen, they don't win every block, but they win every assignment. Like there were no MEs. When I looked at it, there are a few missed blocks. You had your tight end, the rookie tight end. He kind of missed the block at the point of attack, and guys didn't hold up, but there were no blown assignments, and that's encouraging. And when you have Singletary as your runner or Gray, both of those guys, but Singletary in particular, is a very disciplined runner. He stays in a groove. He stays in the pocket of his offensive lineman. And then when he gets a hole, he'll run through an arm tackle. And that's, he doesn't have the suddenness of a Saquon Barkley, but he will give you the production to move the chains because he gets behind his offensive lineman. And then when that opens up, he takes it. And the other observation I had about this offensive line is that it's either a stalemate or they're moving the line of scrimmage. Not that whole game, I didn't see one offensive lineman get knocked back into the backfield. So their pass pro is really good so far. So if they're trending, if they continue to be as good as they're trending right now, that's not an excuse for your quarterback no more, because that means the team went out and did everything that they were supposed to do in getting experienced offensive linemen. That's something that's very important too. They've got guys that have experience, and those are their starters, and John Michael Schmitz is in there, but they got experienced guys in there, and Carmen Bracilli has done a incredible job putting together a blocking scheme or a blocking infrastructure that they all seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, just in wrapping up on Jones, the one, obviously the pick six is, as you say, mind blowing. There's no way to rationalize that one. The one throw that was a little disappointing to me in the red zone, it might have been his last series, was missing Gray in the flat because they would have gotten a third down. That's one he's got to put on him. I'm going to chalk that up to still a little bit of rust. Yeah, guy hadn't played since November of last year. And, for the most part, he was throwing that stuff to Barkley. Gray is a new – he didn't get a ton of reps with Gray. So
but
that was a little disappointing.
Yeah, well, listen, it was a bad play, and situational awareness for this quarterback is paramount too, because he's in scoring position on that one. Gray probably takes that and runs it in. And then when he throws his pick six, he's got to know he can't turn the ball over there because it's going to result in a pick six. So those are quarterback things, right? Those are between the ear things. But the swing pass to Gray, he's got to make that pass because that gives him an opportunity to score. So, again, he's far from perfect, but there are some things that'll say, okay, these things can get cleaned up. He's not a lost cause. And so, I mean, that's where I am at on that. And, folks, take a look at the All 22. Most of you guys have access to it. At one point, in the game, he went 9 for 11. So there are some things there. And, for all the criticisms that you hear about, well, he can't read the defense or he takes and he's a one-look quarterback, you'll see him going through progressions throughout this game, unless he's going to Malik Nabers, where she's saying, I'm throwing it to him. But when you start to look at this tape, you'll see the progressions. And okay, and you can pick a clip or two because he was only, 11 for 18? So yeah, so he missed some passes, right? So I'm sure you could highlight those, but then go look at the ones that he did make and the plays that he did make and decisions that he did make, and you'll say, okay, we got something we can work with. And again, that's not elevating him to any other status other than, he's not a lost cause. I think he's going to be a very productive quarterback. And then if I am wrapping this up on the Daniel Jones piece of it, if I put my teammate hat on and I was in that locker room with him, it would be 3 words I'd say to him: stay fucking fearless. That's what it would be, because he's got a play caller in Brian Dable who, as you can see, he didn't put the training wheels back on after the pick 6. He just said, we're going to continue to go down the field. You need to work, and they were letting him work it out. So, for Daniel, stay fucking fearless. It's nothing. He did not wilt after the pick 6, and he got his offense on track.
Nabers is the real deal. I was watching him out there in pregame warmups, and then in
Yep.
the game, he's a difference maker. He's fluid. He's smooth. Runs really nice routes. I mean, he's
a
another
threat.
one. Yeah, I mean, it's just fun to watch. He's going to make everybody around him better.
He makes them better. Listen, he gets a back shoulder that's probably 7 feet high or 8 feet high and makes the catch, gets his feet down. So people say, yeah, well, that was a bad pass. Well, the reason they drafted Nabers is because he can make catches on those and bail his quarterback out. That it's a team sport, and that has to happen every once in a while.
Well, geez, how many times over the last couple of years, Carl, have we talked about this, where they go through not just one game, but weeks of games where they didn't make a play off schedule above the X's and O's.
Above the X's and O's, yep.
And every other team's got an above the X's and O's guy. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you sit there and you say to yourself, okay, got that covered. Not much pass rush. Burns and Thibodeau were kind of quiet.
Well, if you look at how they operate, the Houston Texans, and again, this wasn't a game planned situation for the Giants defense, but as a general rule, this is a short drop quarterback. When you go back, and if you guys look at the all 22 on that, you can tell me, I don't think he took a lot of 5-step drops at all. He was 3-step drops, and he sits in that pocket. And, their offense is really, really good in the way they scheme things, but the ball is out of his hands. So they don't expose him to sacks and to a pass rush. Now, they got there close a couple of times, and he had to scramble a few times, but no, the pass rush was negated because, they just didn't expose him. He was in the pocket, 3-step drops, that back foot hits, and he's letting the ball go. It's, 10-yard plays or something like that, but they were not going to allow him to get hit. And that's how he's been operating, even last year. I mean, he does do some 5-step stuff, but, he's really efficient when he sits in that pocket, and they got these timing routes and combo routes that their guys are really good at.
So, secondary is a concern. It remains a concern.
It is.
I see Stephon Gilmore signed with Minnesota, who the Giants will play in week 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they have up their sleeve as far as what they're thinking, but you kind of get the feeling that they may have to look outside for a little bit of help. I mean, Phillips didn't play. He was banged up.
Mm-hmm.
Flott missed time again because he's banged up a little bit. They need to be on the field and get reps. And the safety spot, I mean,
you got good, I don't even want to say bodies, but you've got talent at the safety position. They just got to figure out what that combination is going to be. Jason Pinnock and probably the rookie, Nubin, because Nubin's got great ball tracking skills. Belton, again, is probably their more physical of the three guys, but Nubin is a physical player as well, and he's tough. So they just got to figure out that combination. But the concern is cornerback number 2. And then, listen, Tay Banks is, honeymoon's over as far as his opponents are concerned. They're going to challenge him. And I think him going against Nabers in practice every week should have a positive impact on how he plays other people's best receivers, because it's not always good days for him when he's playing against Nabers. And I know that Banks is a mentally tough kid. He's super confident. So working with Malik Nabers every practice is only going to serve him well, but they got to get another guy. And then, with Cordell Flott, I think the only thing you can say really right now is he's inconsistent. There are some things that he'll do that the coaches will love, but it's only one in a row. He can't stack them. And they, at the cornerback position, it only takes one play. So you got to be consistent. You've got to, be committed to your technique. And, he's been inconsistent at best.
I love what Dable told us in our production meeting the afternoon before. He said, sometimes you see guys on your team and they do well in practice, and then we put them in the preseason games and they excel going against the other team's 2s and 3s, and then you put them on the roster. And he says, "Listen, this has been happening since I've been coaching." And then you get into the regular season, and now you need those guys to play, and all of a sudden you realize they really can't play on a level that you need them to be able to perform in when it's next man up. So part of what he wanted to do on Saturday afternoon was get some of the back end guys, the backups, or the guys competing for backup spots, and throw them in there with the ones. And if there was ever a guy that took advantage of that opportunity, it's the rookie free agent out of SMU, Elijah Chapman.
Yeah.
Because he drew a holding penalty. Giants ones in there against Houston's ones. Drew a holding penalty. And then he had the great hustle play. But he always does something in these games and in these practices that catches your eye. And the fact that he did it against Houston's ones kind of elevates him, I think, in my opinion.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he enters the rotation. And it's probably going to be sooner than later, because when they go with that 3-4 look, they're going to need that third guy down there. And he's probably going to be that guy, especially now they got injuries also along that line. So he's probably going to be the guy there. But, here's a guy taking advantage of every opportunity that he has. And not only just taking advantage of it, but he's showing up on tape. And then I contrast that with guys that flashed last year, Timon Fox, Durian Beavers before he got hurt, Azeez Ojulari. The train is leaving the station for those guys, and they got to do something to show up, because last I checked, the Giants are constantly drafting linebackers, right? And Muasau was in there, and he did a pretty decent job in there next to Bobby Okereke. So, train's leaving. Y'all better get on it, or it's going to leave you, because they're just adding more and more players at that position, and they're not considering you and saying, well, you're injured, we'll wait for you to get healthy. Nope, you gotta be very assertive there. Another thing that when you're talking about when we were in the production meeting with Coach Dabes, and we kind of got into the whole wide receiver thing, and the discussion, on the blogs and social media is like, which receiver, what are they going to keep, 5, 6, or who are those guys going to be? And Dave said it's not necessarily about which guy can play special teams. And that's something that, people think, well, if you're going to be a fifth or a sixth receiver, you're going to have to play special teams. He said that's not the case. He said a lot of it, he knows some guys are good on special teams. Other guys know the system and they've been productive in it. And that's a guy like Isaiah Hodgins, right? He probably can play some special teams, but he came up big when they needed him. Minnesota game, I think he was their leading receiver. So he understands the system, and I think that gives him a leg up, whether he plays special teams or not. And I don't think anyone has flat out outplayed him. So he's kind of, I don't want to say incumbent, but I think he's got an inside track, knowing the system and knowing that they can trust him when they put him in there. And the other guys that are there vying for those extra wide receiver positions haven't distinguished themselves any more than he has.
Yeah, I think, well, look, he told it, we know there's the four, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's Nabers, Slayton, Wandale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt. Okay, we got those four in a bucket. Then you've got there's one job between, I think, the way I'm reading it, McKenzie and Gunnar Olszewski.
Yeah.
One job for those two guys. A receiver spot, and the main punt return guy and potentially kick return guy. And then you have Hodgins, who's been around, but you can't discount the fact that Hodgins really was a no-show last year. He didn't really do much.
Right.
And now you got Allen Robinson, who is, the ultimate pros pro, who's maybe the biggest of the receivers that they have. That's a former Pro Bowler and is just as professional as you're possibly going to be, and a good guy, with younger receivers to have as a veteran presence. And then he said, then there's the other bucket of the Bryce Ford Wheatons, the Houstons, and those guys. They're younger with untested. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I kind of have it like a head-to-head competition between Robinson and Hodgins. Like there's only one spot for those two guys.
Yeah. And again, it won't come down to special teams for those two guys.
No. Because I asked him, I actually asked him that specific questions. Is special teams the deciding factor? And he said, in that situation, not necessarily. Because what if one of your, like let's just say, like, what if Slayton goes down for 2 weeks, right? Or Hyatt goes down for 2 weeks. Well, I know Allen Robinson has caught a bazillion passes in his career. I know he had a bunch of 1,000-yard seasons. I know he was a Pro Bowler. I feel pretty comfortable if you had to use him as your starter for a few weeks, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Now let's go to the ugly. The ugly was, as nicely as the 2s and 3s played against Detroit, it felt to me like there were a lot of guys that were putting their job in jeopardy. Now, I don't know if Ojulari's job is in jeopardy, but for a guy going against 2s and 3s, kind of really did nothing. But you mentioned Beavers, and some of these other guys.
Listen,
it was kind of interesting that they played as poorly as they did.
Well, you've got on one side Ojulari, and on the other side Boogie Basham. I don't think either one of those guys had good days, which you would suspect or you would expect that they show up, because these are the two that are supposed to be spelling Burns and Thibodeau, right? So you got to show some ability to get production, and especially for Azeez Ojulari, I think for him, he's got to get his stamina, his mental endurance, and his physical stamina up because playing every down, he was getting wore out there, having to play blocks. Now, he played a few blocks really good, and then he looked like he just wore out, right? And you can't be that. You've got to have the same energy level as the guys you're replacing because, again, it's your job is not just to be a specialized rusher when a guy like Brian Burns is expected to play run and pass, and they're not going to put you in to take his sacks. So you're in the rotation whenever they put you in. It could be second down, and you've got to be able to hold up versus the run. And, same with Boogie Basham. I mean, both of those guys, I expected to see a lot more from them yesterday, and they just didn't show up on film like I thought they would. And especially in the pass rush, they just got nothing. Like they didn't even flash. And again, the kid Muasau, who's not your typical height, weight, speed guy, he flashed. He made plays. He was involved in a lot of football plays. And, this is where you are with your candidates to make this team and, guys who you would expect to be part of it and play a role. They didn't show up against the number twos and the number threes.
And injuries are going to be a factor here. I mean, they got nicked up in a lot of different spots. Kind of, some of this stuff will sort itself out when guys get healthy. And for the guys that can't get back on the field, I mean, each day is ticking because, I mean, look at what they did this week. They brought in 2 new safeties.
Yeah.
They brought in a tight end,
Mm-hmm.
fullback, Jacob Johnson. They brought in a running back, Joshua Kelly, because, Tracy and Miller were banged up. But, they're not hesitant to go out and bring people in with whether it's tryouts or whatever. Every week it's like somebody else. They had KJ Cloud, who was on the depth chart, who they had just signed a week and a half ago. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious. I know Dable was asked today's Sunday that we're recording this. He was asked about Micah McFadden. Said doesn't have any updates on the injury guys. They're going to meet with the medical team either later today or tomorrow morning to find out where guys are at. But, that's also something that you got to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And again, they may have to be looking elsewhere just to fill in, for some guys that have to get healthy. And then, another guy that I think he factors in, but he's got to get healthier too, is Lawrence Cager. I think he's got a hamstring or something like that. So he may be 2 weeks away. But I think, he's a guy that will factor into their passing plans as well because he's, kind of a hybrid receiver / tight end.
What's your gut tell you? Do you think he'll play any of the starters against the Jets or no?
Well, here's I don't think there's a lot to be gained. There's more to be lost than gained. Even practicing right now, this joint practice is so late in camp, I don't even know if it's even beneficial. And unless you're taking a look at all your young guys, but playing guys this late into the preseason, I don't think it's beneficial because if you lose a guy now, he's out for the first game. Right? Look, I agree with Brian Dable. It's football. You got to play football, but also you got to play football when they count as well. And I think you had some really good work against the Detroit Lions. You got a chance to see where you need to be against a really good Houston Texans team. I would bubble wrap. I'm telling you, I would literally bubble wrap my guys and say, okay, we're going to practice, but you're not going to play in this last game, and we're going to put everything towards being as healthy as a team as we can be against the Minnesota Vikings. Because you just don't want to limp in to start the season, because that's the other thing that drives, this fan base crazy is the injuries and guys not coming back. And, so they had basically walk-ons at many parts of the season at many positions. So they don't want to start at that pace. It's football, injuries happen. But right now, I'd rather those injuries happen in games that count than those that are so close to the regular season that, they happen. So I think it's a decision they have to make, and maybe they decide on some of the bubble guys, or guys they need to really know about, like an Ojolari, like a Boogie Basham, so that they can say, okay, well, this is not going to work for us. We're going to have to go out and get somebody from another team, off the waiver wire, because that's the other part too, Bob. They are picking sixth, I believe.
In the waivers, yeah, they have
In
they're
the
sixth in
waivers.
the waiver claim order.
Yeah, so maybe that's where they're going to get really good looks at guys like Basham and Hodgins and all those guys. But certainly in the cornerback area, they got to be looking closely at that. Like, I don't know if Tay Banks is going to play, but I know Trey Hawkins is going to play. Cordell Flott, if he's available, he's probably going to play because he needs the reps. I would not expose my quarterback. I think you have enough of a body of work from this last game to know what you can work on and how you can, what you can put in your game plan for him, because you look at the all 22, you can see that, there were some things that you can work with there. And they can work out the rest. They can, work some things out in practice now, like, the one-on-one down the sideline and throwing that back shoulder. He had another back shoulder to Jalen Hyatt, who caught it with one hand. They just got to work on those things, because that's what they're going to get in those one-on-one coverages. And, you're going to play some good cornerbacks, and you may have to, put the ball in there. And that's where it's the only place it can be.
All right, you got anything else to button up this game with?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a personal question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want. But, obviously, there's been so much ramp up to season 100. We had the thing at the Garden, which was a lot of fun. The Giants are going to have this unbelievable fan fest. It's free. You can go to giants.com and get your tickets. They're going to have a drone show that chronicles the history of the franchise, the fireworks. They're going to have panel discussions throughout the course of the night on Friday the 6th. Pictures with the Super Bowl trophies, tour of the locker room, and it's free. I mean, it's a great way to kick the season off. And then on game day, the 5K on Saturday, game day, top 100 get introduced. We got 3 more weeks to reveal names. Every Tuesday morning around 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 more names come out. So we got 10 to 21, 20 to 11, and then 10 to 1. Your name hasn't been announced yet. Are you kind of getting curious where you're falling into this thing?
Nope. For me, Bob, just to be on that list is what matters to me. I mean, that's the biggest honor ever. Of all the people that have worn that uniform, I'm one of the 100 greatest to ever do it in a Giants uniform. So, wherever it is, I'm on it. That's what matters. I'm on it.
It's got to be kind of fun though. Like every time a list comes out, that your name's not on it.
Yes.
It's like the one time you don't want your every time 10 more names come out and you don't hear your name, you're like, oh,
okay,
it's the best time to not hear my name.
Yeah,
it means
exactly.
I'm moving on up.
Yeah.
All right. How do we like to end this?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
That's all right. Believe in Giants.